The wind cut through Emma Daniels like 1,000 frozen knives as she clutched her silent baby tighter against her chest. The wagon wheels having broken miles back on this desolate Wyoming trail in the brutal winter of 1883. She had been traveling alone, fleeing from a husband who drank himself into rages, and now she feared she had traded one death for another, as her 3-month-old daughter lay terrifyingly still beneath layers of inadequate blankets. The child's lips holding a faint blue tinge that made Emma's heart clench with a terror more profound than any she had ever known. The November storm had descended without mercy 3 hours ago, transforming the landscape into an endless expanse of white that swallowed landmarks and hope alike. Emma had tried to keep moving, pushing through snow that reached her knees, but exhaustion and hypothermia were claiming her body inch by inch. She stumbled back to the broken wagon, crawling inside its inadequate shelter, and wrapped herself around her baby, singing lullabies through chattering teeth to a child who did not stir, did not cry, did not respond at all. Hours passed in a blur of cold and prayer. Emma felt her consciousness beginning to slip away, her body growing numb in a way that almost felt peaceful. She pressed her lips to her daughter's forehead, whispering apologies for bringing her into this world only to let her freeze in it, when suddenly she heard something that seemed impossible through the howling wind. Hoofbeats. The steady, determined rhythm of a horse pushing through deep snow. She tried to call out, but her voice emerged as barely a whisper. The hoofbeats grew closer, then stopped. She heard a man's voice, deep and concerned, calling into the storm. "Anyone there? I saw the wagon from the ridge." Emma gathered every ounce of strength remaining in her body and managed a weak cry for help. Seconds later, the wagon cover flew open and a snow-covered figure appeared, his face barely visible beneath a frost-covered hat and scarf. All she could see clearly were his eyes, a striking blue-gray that widened with alarm when he saw her condition. "Good God, madam, how long have you been out here?" The cowboy immediately began assessing the situation, his gloved hands moving with swift efficiency as he climbed into the wagon. "I'm Austin Ramsey. I've got shelter about 2 miles from here. We need to get you warm right now." "My baby," Emma managed through frozen lips. "She's not moving, she's not crying. Please save my baby." Austin pulled back the blankets enough to see the infant's face, and Emma saw something flash across his features, an expression she couldn't read. Without another word, he began unbuttoning his heavy coat, then opened his wool shirt beneath it. "What are you doing?" Emma asked, confusion cutting through her haze. "Body heat. It's the fastest way to warm someone suffering from exposure." He gently took the baby from Emma's arms, and she wanted to protest, wanted to hold her daughter close, but her arms wouldn't obey her commands. Austin tucked the tiny infant against his bare chest, then rebuttoned his shirt and coat around her, creating a warm cocoon. "Now can you stand?" "I don't think so," Emma admitted, hating the weakness in her voice. Austin didn't hesitate. With the baby secured against his chest, he scooped Emma up in his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. The movement made her dizzy, but she felt the warmth radiating from him, and despite her fears about being carried away by a stranger, survival instinct overrode caution. "My horse can carry us all," Austin said, his breath creating clouds in the frigid air. "It's going to be a hard ride, but we'll make it. Stay conscious if you can. Talk to me." He somehow managed to get them both onto his large bay gelding, settling Emma in front of him so she was surrounded by his warmth, his arms around her as he gripped the reins. The baby remained pressed between them, and Emma tried to feel for any sign of life, any small movement. "What's your name?" Austin asked as he urged the horse forward, the animal trudging through the snow with determined strength. Emma Daniels, she said, forcing the words out. My daughter is Sarah, is she? Can you feel if she's? I can feel her breathing, Austin said firmly. It's shallow, but she's breathing. We're not giving up on her. Tell me what brought you out here alone in winter. Emma knew he was keeping her talking to prevent her from losing consciousness, but she found herself answering anyway, perhaps because she thought she might die and wanted someone to know her story. I was married to a man in Cheyenne, Thomas Daniels. He was charming when we courted, but after we married, he changed. The drinking got worse, and then came the anger. I endured it for a year, telling myself it would get better, that I could change him. Her voice cracked with emotion and cold. When I found out I was carrying Sarah, I hoped it would make him want to be better. Instead, he grew resentful. After she was born, he came home drunk one night and raised his hand to her. That was when I knew I had to leave. Austin's arms tightened slightly around her, a gesture of protection that made something warm flicker in her frozen chest. I packed what I could fit in the wagon, took the money I had been hiding, and left while he was passed out, Emma continued. I was heading south, hoping to reach my sister in Colorado. But the wagon was old, the wheel was already cracked, and then the storm came. You're a brave woman, Austin said, and there was no patronization in his tone, only respect. It takes courage to leave, especially with a baby. You did the right thing. Emma wanted to argue that nothing about this situation felt right, that she had nearly killed her daughter by fleeing into winter, but then she felt it. The smallest movement against her chest. A tiny shifting, a flutter of motion from the baby pressed between them. She moved, Emma gasped. Austin, she moved. Good, that's good. Keep talking to her. Let her hear your voice. Emma began murmuring to Sarah, telling her about the life they would have, about sunshine and warmth and all the love she deserved. The ride seemed endless, the cold seeping deeper despite Austin's body heat. But finally, through the swirling snow, Emma saw the dark shape of a cabin emerging from the white landscape. Austin dismounted with practiced ease despite his double burden, and carried Emma through the door while keeping the baby secure against his chest. The cabin was small but solid, with a stone fireplace and simple furnishings that spoke of a man who lived alone but lived comfortably. Most importantly, embers still glowed in the fireplace. He set Emma down in a chair near the hearth and immediately began building up the fire, his movements swift and sure. Within minutes, flames were crackling and warmth began spreading through the space. Only then did he carefully unbutton his coat and shirt to check on the baby. Emma leaned forward anxiously as Austin gently lifted Sarah, examining her with surprising tenderness for a rough-looking cowboy. The baby's color looked better, less blue, and as the warmth of the cabin reached her, Sarah's face scrunched up in displeasure. Then came the sound Emma had been desperately praying to hear, a cry. Weak at first, then growing stronger, a newborn's protest against the cold and discomfort she had endured. It was the sweetest sound Emma had ever heard, and tears began streaming down her frozen cheeks. There she is, Austin said softly, a smile transforming his weathered face into something almost beautiful. There's our fighter. He handed Sarah to Emma, who clutched her daughter close, sobbing with relief and gratitude. Austin turned away to give them a moment, busying himself with heating water and gathering more blankets. When he returned, he wrapped the blankets around both mother and child, then knelt beside them to examine them more carefully. You're both going to be all right, he said with quiet certainty. But you need to warm up gradually. I'm going to make some broth. Can you hold her while I work? I'm never letting her go again, Emma said fiercely, and Austin's expression softened with understanding. Over the next hour, Austin moved around his cabin with competent efficiency, preparing warm broth. heating bricks to place near Emma's feet, and checking on both his patients with a gentle concern that surprised Emma. This was no rough-edged outlaw or careless drifter. This was a man who knew how to care for living things, who treated her daughter with reverence and respect. When he finally sat down across from her with his own bowl of broth, Emma took her first real look at him now that the frost had melted from his features. Austin Ramsey appeared to be in his late 20s, with dark blonde hair that curled slightly at his collar, those striking blue-gray eyes, and a strong jaw shadowed with several days of stubble. He was handsome in a rugged way, with weathered skin that spoke of years spent outdoors and small scars that told stories she didn't yet know. "Thank you," Emma said, the words feeling wholly inadequate for what he had done. "You saved our lives." Austin shook his head. "I was just in the right place at the right time. I had been checking on cattle in the far pasture when the storm hit, saw your wagon on my way back and went to investigate. Lucky for all of us." "Lucky," Emma repeated, looking down at Sarah, who was now nursing weakly but steadily. "I think it was more than luck. I think it was providence." "Maybe so," Austin agreed quietly. He studied her for a moment, his expression thoughtful. "You're welcome to stay here as long as you need. The storm's not letting up, and even when it does, you're going to need time to recover." "Both of you." Emma felt a flutter of anxiety. "I don't want to impose. You've already done so much. You're not imposing. I have the space, and I'm not going to send a woman and baby back out into the cold." His tone was firm but kind. "Besides, your wagon needs repairs before it'll be roadworthy again. We can figure out next steps once the weather clears." Emma nodded, too exhausted to argue and grateful beyond words for his generosity. As the warmth of the fire and the food began to restore her strength, she found herself studying Austin more closely. There was a quietness about him, a sense of solitude that felt like more than just living alone. It was the solitude of someone who had chosen isolation, perhaps to escape something or to protect something. "You live out here alone?" Emma asked, then immediately worried she was being too forward. "I'm sorry, that's not my business." "It's all right," Austin said, though something shadowed his eyes. "Yes, I live alone. Have for about 3 years now. I run cattle on the land, work as a ranch hand for the big spread about 10 miles east when they need extra hands. It's a simple life, but it suits me." There was clearly more to the story, but Emma didn't press. She was a stranger in his home, dependent on his kindness, and she had no right to pry into his past when she had just spilled her own painful history during their ride. The storm continued to rage outside, wind howling around the sturdy cabin walls, but inside, warmth and safety cocooned them. Austin set up his own bedroom for Emma and Sarah, insisting he would sleep by the fire. He brought in warm water so she could clean up, provided one of his own shirts for her to wear since her clothes were soaked through, and checked on them throughout the evening with a carefulness that touched Emma's heart. That night, lying in Austin's bed with Sarah sleeping peacefully beside her in a makeshift cradle he had fashioned from a drawer and soft blankets, Emma stared at the ceiling and tried to process everything that had happened. 12 hours ago, she had been certain she would die in that wagon, that her daughter would freeze in her arms, that her desperate flight from Thomas would end in tragedy. Instead, a stranger had appeared through the storm like an answer to prayer and brought them to safety. She thought about Austin's gentle hands as he cared for Sarah, the way he had held the baby against his own skin to warm her, the respect and kindness he had shown. Emma had been married to a man who grew cruel with familiarity, who saw her as property rather than partner. In a few short hours, this cowboy had shown her more genuine care than Thomas had in 2 years of marriage. The thought made her feel guilty, as though she was being disloyal by comparing them, but she couldn't help it. When Austin looked at her, she felt seen. When he spoke to her, she felt heard. And when he had wrapped those blankets around her and said she was going to be all right, she had believed him completely. Emma told herself it was just gratitude, just the natural response of someone whose life had been saved. But as she drifted toward sleep, listening to Sarah's soft breathing and the crackle of the fire beyond the door, she couldn't deny the small spark of something else warming in her chest, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. The storm lasted 3 days. During that time, Emma and Austin fell into an unexpected rhythm of domesticity. He tended to his animals in the barn, venturing out into the brutal cold to feed horses and check on the cattle in his near pastures, while Emma recovered her strength and cared for Sarah. When Austin was inside, they talked. Emma learned that Austin had grown up on a ranch in Montana, the youngest of 4 brothers. He had been engaged once to a woman named Catherine, and they had planned to build a life together on this very piece of land. But 2 weeks before their wedding, Catherine had died from pneumonia during a harsh winter. Austin had gone ahead and built the cabin anyway, pouring his grief into the work, and then isolated himself here, unable to face going back to his family and their pity. "I told myself I was better off alone," Austin admitted one evening as they sat by the fire, Sarah sleeping in Emma's arms. "That caring for someone just meant more pain when you lost them. I threw myself into work, into building this place, into surviving. I forgot about living." Emma understood that impulse all too well. "I think we both forgot about living for a while," she said softly. "I survived my marriage by becoming small, by trying not to provoke Thomas's anger, by just enduring each day. It wasn't until Sarah was born that I remembered what it felt like to love something enough to fight for it." "You're a good mother," Austin said, watching her with an expression that made Emma's heart skip. "Sarah's lucky to have you." "We're both lucky to have found you," Emma replied, meeting his gaze. Something passed between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of connection that went beyond gratitude or circumstance. Austin looked away first, clearing his throat. "I should check the fire in the stove before we turn in." Emma recognized the retreat for what it was, a pulling back from something that frightened him, and she didn't push. But that night, lying alone in the dark, she admitted to herself that her feelings for Austin Ramsey had grown beyond simple gratitude. She was drawn to his quiet strength, his gentle hands, the way he looked at Sarah with such tenderness. She was drawn to the man who had emerged from the storm to save her life and stayed to make her feel safe for the first time in years. The storm finally broke on the 4th day, leaving behind a world transformed into crystalline white. The sun emerged, blindingly bright against the snow, and Austin ventured out to assess the damage. When he returned, his expression was serious. "The snow's deep, but the temperature's rising," he reported. "In a few days the trails will be passable again. I can ride out to your wagon, see what can be salvaged and what needs repairing." Emma felt her stomach twist with anxiety. The storm breaking meant their time in this protective bubble was ending, that she would need to make decisions about what came next. She was legally still married to Thomas, though she hoped the distance and her disappearance would keep him from finding her. She needed to reach her sister in Colorado, needed to build a new life for herself and Sarah. But the thought of leaving Austin's cabin, of saying goodbye to this man who had become so important to her in such a short time, filled her with an aching sadness she hadn't anticipated. "Emma," Austin said carefully, sitting down across from her, "I want you to know that you don't have to leave right away. Even when the trails are clear, even when your wagon's repaired, you're welcome to stay as long as you need." "That's kind of you," Emma said, her voice catching slightly. But I can't impose on your hospitality forever. You have your own life, your own work. What if I don't want you to go? The words emerged quiet but intense, and Austin looked almost surprised that he had spoken them aloud. What if these past few days have been the most alive I've felt in 3 years? Emma's heart began to pound. Austin, I know it's too soon, he continued, the words coming faster now as though he needed to get them out before he lost his courage. I know you just escaped a bad marriage and you have every reason not to trust another man. I know you barely know me. But Emma, I can't pretend that having you and Sarah here hasn't changed something in me. This cabin stopped feeling empty. I stopped feeling empty. Emma set Sarah down gently in her cradle and moved closer to Austin, her own courage rising to meet his. It's not too soon, she said softly. Or maybe it is, by conventional standards, but nothing about our situation has been conventional. You saved my life, Austin. More than that, you've treated me with more respect and kindness than I've known in years. You've been gentle with my daughter, patient with me, and you've made me remember what it feels like to be valued. Austin reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand in his. His palm was calloused from hard work, but his touch was achingly gentle. I'm not good with words, he said roughly. I'm just a cowboy who lives alone on a piece of land most people never see. But if you'd be willing to stay, to give me a chance to prove that not all men are like your husband, I swear I would spend every day trying to make you happy. Emma felt tears prick her eyes, but these were different from the tears of fear and desperation she had shed in recent weeks. These were tears of hope, of possibility, of something beautiful emerging from hardship. I'm still married, she whispered. Legally, I belong to Thomas. You don't belong to anyone but yourself, Austin said fiercely. And if he ever comes looking for you, he'll have to go through me. But Emma, you don't have to decide anything right now. Stay through the winter. Get to know me. Let me get to know you. If come spring you still want to go to your sister, I'll take you there myself and wish you well. But if you feel even a fraction of what I'm starting to feel, then maybe we can build something real together. Emma looked into his blue-gray eyes and saw sincerity, hope, and vulnerability. This strong man who had saved her from the storm was offering her his heart, and she realized that she wanted nothing more than to accept it. I want to stay, she said simply. Not just through the winter. I want to stay and see what we can build together. Austin's face transformed with joy, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her close with a tenderness that made Emma feel cherished rather than possessed. She rested her head against his chest and listened to the steady beat of his heart, the same heart that had warmed her daughter back to life. They stayed like that for a long moment, savoring the sweetness of new beginning, until Sarah woke with a hungry cry that made them both laugh. As Emma tended to her daughter, Austin watched them with an expression of wonder, and Emma knew with sudden certainty that she had made the right choice. The following weeks unfolded with a gentle magic that Emma had never experienced before. Austin rode out to her wagon and brought back what could be salvaged, including the small trunk of clothes and keepsakes she had packed, the few photographs she owned, and the quilt her grandmother had made. He spent days repairing the wagon, not because she would need it to leave, but because he understood it represented her independence, her means of escape if she ever needed one. Emma made the cabin into a home, adding small touches that brightened the sparse bachelor quarters. She cooked meals that filled the space with warmth and delicious smells, mended Austin's worn clothes, and organized the chaos of his simple storage. But more than that, she brought life and laughter into the silence he had wrapped around himself for so long. They talked for hours every evening, sharing their histories, their dreams, their fears. Austin told her about his childhood on the ranch, about the brother who had died breaking horses, about his mother who still sent him letters he rarely answered because reading them hurt too much. Emma shared memories of her own childhood, of the father she had lost to a mining accident, of the mother who had died birthing a stillborn son when Emma was 15. "We're both orphans of sorts," Emma mused one evening, "both carrying losses that shaped us." "Maybe that's why we found each other," Austin suggested. "Two people who understood loss meeting at exactly the moment when we both needed saving." Emma smiled at that. "You did the saving." "No," Austin said seriously. "You saved me just as much. I was dying out here, Emma. Not physically, but inside. You and Sarah brought me back to life." Their relationship deepened with each passing day, but Austin was careful never to push, never to assume. He treated Emma with a respect that felt revolutionary after Thomas's possessiveness. He asked permission before taking her hand, gave her space when she needed it, and included her in decisions about the household as though her opinion mattered as much as his. With Sarah, Austin was endlessly patient and gentle. He would hold the baby while Emma cooked, walking her around the cabin and talking to her in a low, soothing voice. He made her toys from carved wood, fashioned a better cradle with rockers so Emma could soothe her to sleep more easily, and never complained when Sarah's crying woke him in the middle of the night. Emma watched him with her daughter and felt her heart expand with love for this man, who had no obligation to care for a child that wasn't his, but did so anyway, with wholehearted devotion. One evening in late December, as they sat by the fire after Sarah had been put to bed, Austin took Emma's hand and looked at her with serious eyes. "I need to know about your husband," he said quietly. "Not because I doubt your reasons for leaving, but because I need to understand what we might be facing. Will he look for you? Does he have the means or the determination to track you down?" Emma had been dreading this conversation but knew it was necessary. "Thomas is not a wealthy man, and he's not particularly resourceful when he's sober, which is rarely. I left no trail for him to follow, gave no one any hint of where I was going. He might assume I went to my sister, but he doesn't know where she lives. I never told him because I didn't trust him not to cause trouble for her." "What kind of man is he when he's angry?" Austin pressed gently. Emma swallowed hard. "Violent, mean. He threw things, broke furniture, grabbed me hard enough to leave bruises. He never struck me with a closed fist, but I knew it was only a matter of time. When he raised his hand to Sarah, I saw murder in his eyes. That's when I knew I couldn't wait any longer, couldn't make any more excuses." Austin's jaw tightened with suppressed anger, but his voice remained calm. "If he ever finds you here, I will protect you. Both of you, you need to know that. I won't let him take you back, and I won't let him hurt you or Sarah." "I know," Emma said, squeezing his hand. "I feel safe with you in a way I never felt with Thomas, even in the early days when I thought I loved him." "Did you love him?" Austin asked, and there was vulnerability in the question. Emma considered carefully. "I thought I did. But now I wonder if I was just lonely after my mother died, desperate for someone to care for me. Thomas was charming when he courted me, attentive and romantic. I didn't see the darkness underneath until after we married, and it was too late. What I felt for him was nothing compared to what I'm beginning to feel for you." Austin's eyes searched hers. "And what are you beginning to feel for me?" Emma took a breath, gathering her courage. "I'm falling in love with you, Austin Ramsey. Maybe I started falling the moment you tucked my baby against your heart to warm her. Maybe it happened more slowly, over these weeks of watching you be kind and patient and good. But it's happening, and I'm not fighting it anymore." Austin pulled her into his arms, and this time when he held her, there was passion beneath the tenderness. "I love you, Emma Daniels," he said fiercely. I loved you when you were still half frozen and fighting to save your daughter. I loved you when you sat at my table in my too large shirt and thanked me for a bowl of broth as though it was the finest meal. I loved you when you smiled at Sarah, and I saw the strength it took to keep choosing hope over despair. He pulled back just enough to cup her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. I want to marry you, Emma. I know you're not free yet, and I know it might be complicated, but when the time is right, when you're ready, I want you to be my wife in truth, not just in my heart. Emma felt tears stream down her face, but they were tears of joy. Yes, she whispered. When the time is right, yes. 1,000 times yes. Austin kissed her then, a gentle kiss that spoke of promise and devotion, a kiss that tasted of second chances and new beginnings. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling through tears. Christmas came and went, marked by simple celebrations made precious by love. Austin rode to the nearest town and brought back small gifts, including a beautiful doll for Sarah, even though she was far too young to appreciate it yet, and a delicate silver locket for Emma that had belonged to his mother. She sent it to me years ago, Austin explained as he fastened it around Emma's neck. Said I should give it to the woman I loved when I found her. I never thought I would after Catherine died, but Ma had faith even when I didn't. Emma touched the locket with reverent fingers. It's beautiful. But Austin, this should stay in your family. You are my family now, Austin said simply. You and Sarah. Ma will be thrilled when I write to tell her about you. Emma felt a flutter of anxiety. What if she's not? What if she thinks you're making a mistake taking on another man's wife and child? Then she'd be wrong and I'd tell her so, Austin said firmly. But she won't think that. My mother believes in love, in redemption, in second chances. She'll love you because I do. As winter deepened, Austin began teaching Emma about the ranch, showing her how to care for the animals, how to read the weather, how to handle a rifle for protection when he was away working. Emma proved to be a quick learner, and Austin loved watching her gain confidence, seeing her blossom from the frightened woman who had nearly frozen to death into someone strong and capable. In February, when Sarah was 5 months old, Austin made a trip to the county seat to consult with a lawyer about Emma's situation. He returned with cautiously good news. The lawyer says that abandonment can be grounds for divorce in Wyoming territory, Austin explained. Since Thomas hasn't tried to find you or provide for you, and given his violence, we can petition for a divorce. It will take time, probably 6 months to a year, but it's possible. Emma felt hope surge through her. Truly, I could be free of him legally. Truly, Austin confirmed. We'll need to document what happened, get witness statements if possible, but the lawyer thinks we have a strong case. In the meantime, you're safe here. Thomas would have to know where to look to cause trouble, and no one in town knows your history. I told the lawyer you were my cousin who had been widowed and needed a place to stay. Emma knew the lie was necessary for her protection, but it still rankled. She hated hiding, hated feeling like she had done something wrong when all she had done was try to protect herself and her child. As though reading her thoughts, Austin took her hands. I know it's not ideal, having to hide the truth, but once the divorce is final, we can be open about everything. We can get married properly, with my family there to celebrate. We can build the life we both want without looking over our shoulders. I want that more than anything, Emma said fervently. A real marriage built on love and respect, a family, more children if we're blessed with them, a life where I don't have to be afraid. You'll have all of that, Austin promised. I swear it. Spring arrived slowly, the snow melting in fits and starts, revealing the brown earth beneath. Austin threw himself into preparing for the growing season, repairing fences, checking his cattle, making plans to expand his small herd. Emma worked beside him when she could, Sarah bundled on her back in a sling Austin had fashioned, and found she loved the physical labor, the sense of building something tangible. One afternoon in April, as they were mending a fence line, Emma paused to wipe sweat from her brow and looked out over the rolling grassland that surrounded Austin's property. The land was beginning to green up, tiny shoots of new growth pushing through the dead grass of winter, and the sky was a brilliant blue unmarred by clouds. "It's beautiful here," Emma said softly. "I never imagined I could be happy living somewhere so remote, but I am. I love this land." Austin came to stand beside her, slipping an arm around her waist. "It's a hard land, unforgiving in a lot of ways, but it's honest. What you put in, you get back. No tricks, no deceptions. Like you," Emma said, leaning into him. "Honest and true." "I try to be," Austin said. "With you, I never want to be anything less." Sarah made a gurgling sound from her sling, and both adults laughed. The baby was growing rapidly, her blue eyes bright and curious, her personality emerging more each day. She was a happy child despite the trauma of her early months, as though she knew instinctively that she was loved and safe. In May, a letter arrived from Austin's mother in response to the one he had sent about Emma. Austin read it aloud to her that evening, his voice warming with affection as he shared his mother's words. "My dearest Austin, I cannot express my joy at learning that you have found love again. I had worried so about you these past years, alone in your grief, cutting yourself off from family and hope. This Emma sounds like a remarkable woman, and I long to meet her and young Sarah. Please know that you have my blessing and my love. I understand the complications of her situation, but love has never been simple or easy. What matters is that you have found each other and are building something good together. Your father sends his regards as well, and your brothers are already planning to visit come summer to meet your new family. We love you, son, and are so proud of the man you have become. Your loving mother, Grace." Emma wiped tears from her eyes as Austin finished reading. "She sounds wonderful." "She is," Austin agreed, "and she's going to love you just as much as I do. My brothers might take some convincing, being protective, but they'll come around once they see how happy you make me." The thought of meeting Austin's family filled Emma with both anticipation and anxiety. She wanted their approval, wanted to be accepted into the family Austin spoke of with such affection, but she worried about being judged for her past, for her failed marriage. As summer approached, Austin hired help to work the ranch so he could devote more time to Emma and Sarah. He took them on rides across the property, showing Emma every corner of the land he loved, sharing his dreams for the future. "I want to build a bigger house," Austin said one evening as they watched the sunset from a hilltop. "This cabin was fine for me alone, but it's too small for a family. I want a proper house with a bedroom for Sarah and rooms for the other children I hope we'll have, a porch where we can sit in the evenings, a real kitchen for you to work in." "I love the cabin," Emma protested. "It's where you saved us, where we fell in love." "We'll keep it," Austin assured her. "Maybe turn it into a bunkhouse for ranch hands someday, but Emma, I want to give you and Sarah everything, a real home, a good life. You deserve that." "I have everything I need right here," Emma said, taking his hand. "You, Sarah, this land. I don't need a bigger house to be happy." "Maybe not," Austin conceded, "but I need to build it anyway. Let me do this for us, for our family." Emma smiled and kissed him softly. "All right, but I get to help plan it." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Austin said, and they spent the rest of the evening talking about the house they would build, the life they would create, the future spreading before them like the endless Wyoming sky. In July, Austin's brothers arrived as promised. Emma was nervous as she watched the three riders approach, but Austin's steady presence beside her kept her calm. His brothers, Daniel, Marcus, and James, were all older than Austin, all bearing the same strong features and capable air. They dismounted and studied Emma with frank curiosity before the eldest, Daniel, broke into a wide smile. "So you're the woman who finally brought our little brother back to life," Daniel said warmly. "Ma's letters haven't stopped singing your praises." Emma relaxed slightly. "Austin has spoken highly of all of you. Thank you for coming so far to visit." "We had to meet the woman who accomplished what we couldn't," Marcus added. "Austin shut us out after Catherine died. We tried everything to reach him, but he was determined to be miserable alone. Then you come along and suddenly he's writing letters about love and second chances and building a future." "Emma saved me," Austin said simply, his arm around her waist. "Just like I saved her, we gave each other reasons to live again." James, the quietest of the brothers, approached Sarah, who was playing on a blanket in the shade. "May I?" he asked Emma, and when she nodded, he carefully picked up the baby. Sarah studied him with serious eyes before breaking into a gummy smile, and James's stern expression melted. "She's beautiful, and clearly has good taste since she likes me best already." The brothers stayed for a week, and Emma watched Austin transform in their presence. The quiet, solitary man she had come to know became more animated, laughing at shared memories, teasing his brothers with evident affection. She saw glimpses of who Austin had been before grief changed him, and she loved both versions of the man, the one who had survived pain and the one who was learning to live fully again. On their last evening, Daniel pulled Emma aside while his brothers were tending the horses. "I wanted to thank you," Daniel said quietly. "Not just for making Austin happy, though that would be enough, but for reminding him that he's part of a family, that he doesn't have to face life alone. He's writing to Ma regularly now, making plans to visit. He's even talking about introducing you to Catherine's parents, which is huge. Catherine's death nearly broke him, and we thought he'd never recover. You've given him back to us." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. "He's given me everything. A home, safety, love. I'm the one who should be grateful." "That's how it should be," Daniel said with a smile. "Both people feeling like they got the better end of the deal. That's when you know it's real." After the brothers left, Emma and Austin stood together watching them ride away until they were just specks on the horizon. "They liked you," Austin said with satisfaction. "I knew they would, but it's good to have it confirmed." "I liked them too," Emma said. "You're lucky to have such a close family." "We're lucky," Austin corrected. "It's your family now too, Emma, you and Sarah. My family is your family." In August, nearly 9 months after that frozen night when Austin had pulled Emma from her broken wagon, the lawyer sent word that Emma's petition for divorce had been granted. Thomas had been served papers, and whether out of spite or genuine disinterest, had not contested it. Emma Daniels was legally free. When Austin read her the news, Emma burst into tears, overwhelmed by relief and gratitude. She was no longer bound to a man who had hurt her, no longer trapped in a marriage that had nearly destroyed her. She was free to build the future she wanted with the man she loved. "Marry me," Austin said, pulling her into his arms. "Right now, today. I don't want to wait another moment to make you my wife." Emma laughed through her tears. "Right now, Austin, we need time to plan, to arrange things properly." "I've been waiting 9 months to call you my wife," Austin said intensely. "I don't want to wait any longer. We can have a big celebration later with my family, but right now, I just want to stand before God and promise to love you forever." Emma felt her heart overflow. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, let's do it. Let's get married today." They rode into town that afternoon, Sarah bundled between them, and found the circuit preacher who served the scattered communities in the region. He was a kind older man who asked no questions about their history. simply agreed to perform the ceremony in the small church on the edge of town. Austin's nearest neighbor, a rancher named William, and his wife Mary, served as witnesses. Mary wept openly as she watched Emma and Austin exchange vows, clearly touched by the obvious love between them. Emma wore the best dress she owned, a simple blue calico that Austin said made her eyes look like Wyoming sky. Austin wore his finest shirt and had even trimmed his hair and shaved for the occasion. Sarah, at 9 months old, babbled contentedly in Mary's arms as her mother married the man who had saved them both. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Austin kissed Emma with a tenderness that made her knees weak and her heart sore. She was married again, but this time to a man who cherished her, who would never raise his hand in anger, who loved her daughter as though she was his own blood. That night, in the cabin that had become home, Austin carried Emma over the threshold with exaggerated ceremony that made them both laugh. He had prepared a simple wedding supper, and after they ate and put Sarah to bed, they sat together by the fire as man and wife. Mrs. Ramsey, Austin said, testing out her new name with a smile. "How does it feel?" "Perfect," Emma said simply. "Everything about this feels perfect." They made love for the first time that night, a gentle and reverent joining that was nothing like Emma's experiences with Thomas. Austin was patient and tender, attentive to her needs and responses, making her feel desired rather than used. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Emma felt a completeness she had never known before. "I love you," she whispered into the night. "I love you more," Austin replied, pulling her closer, "and I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it." The following year unfolded with the kind of happiness Emma had once thought existed only in fairy tales. Austin began building the new house, and Emma helped design every aspect of it. They planned a large kitchen with windows overlooking the pastures, a spacious bedroom for themselves, a nursery for Sarah, and additional rooms for the children they hoped to have. Sarah took her first steps in September, toddling between Emma and Austin with determined concentration. She called Austin Papa long before she managed Mama. And though Emma occasionally felt a pang of sadness that her daughter would never know her biological father, she knew Sarah was far better off with Austin as her parent in every way that mattered. In October, Emma discovered she was pregnant. The realization filled her with joy but also trepidation, memories of her difficult pregnancy with Sarah during her marriage to Thomas flooding back. Austin, sensing her anxiety, held her close and promised that this time would be different. "You're not alone," he reminded her. "I'll be here for every moment, supporting you, caring for you, and our child will be born into love, not fear." Emma's pregnancy progressed smoothly, and as her belly swelled with new life, Austin became even more protective and attentive. He insisted she rest more, took over many of her household tasks, and spent evenings reading to her and Sarah, his hand resting on Emma's stomach feeling for kicks. The new house was completed in March, just weeks before Emma's due date. It was beautiful, solid, and spacious, with all the touches they had planned together. They moved their belongings from the cabin, but as Emma had predicted, saying goodbye to that small space felt bittersweet. "So many important things happened here," Emma said, standing in the empty cabin one last time. "This is where you brought us back to life, where we fell in love, where we became a family. And now we're moving forward into the next chapter," Austin said, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands cradling her pregnant belly. "But we'll never forget what this place meant to us." Their son was born on a warm April evening in 1884, delivered by Mary from the neighboring ranch who had some experience as a midwife. The labor was long but uncomplicated, And when Austin finally got to hold his son, Emma saw tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. "He's perfect," Austin whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Emma, we made something perfect." They named him Thomas, though Austin had initially protested using Emma's ex-husband's name. "It's not after him," Emma had explained. "It's after my father, whose full name was Thomas. I want our son to carry that legacy, not the shadow of the man I left." Understanding, Austin had agreed, and baby Thomas became Tommy, a bright-eyed infant who bore Austin's coloring and Emma's delicate features. Sarah, now almost 2, was fascinated by her baby brother. She would sit beside his cradle for hours, singing nonsense songs to him and bringing him her favorite toys. Watching his children together, Austin often found himself overwhelmed with gratitude for the life he had built from the ashes of his grief. Austin's family came to visit that summer, a joyous reunion that filled the new house with laughter and love. Grace Ramsey, Austin's mother, took one look at Emma and pulled her into a fierce embrace. "Thank you for loving my son," Grace said through tears. "Thank you for giving him back to us." "He saved my life," Emma replied. "Literally and figuratively. I'm the one who should be thanking you for raising such a good man." Grace spent hours with her grandchildren, delighting in Sarah's chattering and Tommy's smiles. Austin's father, a quiet man much like his youngest son, worked alongside Austin on ranch improvements and told Emma privately that he hadn't seen Austin this happy since before Catherine's death. The visit stretched from days into weeks, and Emma loved every moment of being surrounded by family, of watching Sarah and Tommy be spoiled by their grandparents and uncles. It was everything she had dreamed of, the kind of warm, loving family environment she wanted her children to grow up in. After his family left, Austin seemed more settled than ever, as though their approval and acceptance had healed some final wound. He threw himself into expanding the ranch, making it not just sustainable but prosperous. Emma worked beside him when she could, managing the household, keeping their books, and slowly taking on more responsibilities as the children grew. Life fell into a rhythm marked by the seasons, by roundups and branding, by planting and harvesting, by births and growth. Sarah grew from a toddler into a lively little girl who loved following her father around the ranch, learning about cattle and horses and the land. Tommy grew from infant to toddler, a sweet-natured boy who laughed easily and loved everyone he met. In the spring of 1886, Emma gave birth to their second son, whom they named James after Austin's brother. The delivery was easier than Tommy's had been, and James came into the world with a lusty cry that announced his strong will from the start. With 3 children, the house that had seemed so spacious now felt comfortably full. Emma loved the chaos of family life, the noise and mess and constant demands. It was everything she had never had with Thomas, everything she had dreamed of during those dark days in Cheyenne. One evening in late summer, after the children were all asleep, Austin and Emma sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Austin's arm was around Emma's shoulders, and she leaned into his solid warmth, feeling utterly content. "Do you ever think about that night?" Austin asked quietly. "The night I found you in the wagon, all the time," Emma admitted. "I think about how close we came to dying, Sarah and I. How if you had been just an hour later, or if you had decided not to investigate the wagon, everything would have been different." "I think about it too," Austin said. "I think about how I almost didn't go check. I was cold and tired and just wanted to get home. But something pushed me to ride over, some instinct that told me I needed to look." "Divine providence," Emma suggested, "or fate, or just incredible luck." "Whatever it was, I'm grateful for it every day," Austin said fervently. You and the children are the best things that ever happened to me, Emma. This life we've built is more than I ever dreamed possible." Emma turned to look at her husband, seeing the love and devotion in his eyes, and felt her heart swell with matching emotion. "I love you, Austin Ramsey. Thank you for saving us. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for giving me the life I always wanted but never thought I'd have." Austin kissed her softly, a kiss that held years of love and promise. "Thank you for teaching me how to live again," he murmured against her lips. "Thank you for being brave enough to stay." As darkness fell and stars emerged in the vast Wyoming sky, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought about the terrified woman who had fled into a winter storm with a baby in her arms, willing to risk death rather than stay in a marriage that was slowly killing her spirit. She thought about the frozen wagon, the silent baby, the certainty that she had made a terrible mistake that would cost both their lives. And then she thought about the cowboy who had emerged from the storm like an answer to prayer, who had warmed them both back to life, who had heard Sarah's sweet cry and smiled with joy. She thought about falling in love in that small cabin, about learning to trust again, about building a family and a life that exceeded her wildest hopes. The years that followed continued to bring both challenges and joys. The ranch prospered under Austin's careful management and Emma's practical oversight. They added more cattle, built a larger barn, and hired seasonal workers during busy times. Austin became known in the region as a fair employer and honest dealer, and Emma earned respect as a capable ranch wife who could hold her own in both the house and the fields. Sarah grew into a confident young girl who was equally at home helping her father with the cattle or helping her mother in the kitchen. She had a special bond with the horses and begged Austin to teach her to ride properly, which he did with patient care. Tommy and James followed their sister's lead, all three children growing up with a deep love for the land and the life their parents had built. In 1888, Emma gave birth to twin daughters, Anna and Grace, named for Emma's grandmother and Austin's mother. The twins were a surprise and a challenge, keeping Emma exhausted but happy. Austin hired a young woman from town to help with the housework and children, giving Emma time to recover and adjust to having 5 children under the age of 6. The house that had seemed so large now felt perfectly full, every room occupied, every corner echoing with children's laughter and activity. Austin built an addition to accommodate the growing family, adding 2 more bedrooms and expanding the kitchen. "Are we done having children?" Austin asked one evening after a particularly chaotic dinner where Anna had upended her entire plate on the floor and James had gotten into a fight with Tommy over a toy. Emma laughed at the exhausted hope in his voice. "I think 5 is plenty," she agreed. "Though I wouldn't trade a single one of them." "Neither would I," Austin said, surveying his brood with obvious pride. "Though I might need to build another barn just to store all their belongings." As the children grew, Austin made sure they understood the story of how their family came to be. He wanted them to know about Emma's bravery in leaving Thomas, about the storm and the frozen wagon, about how close they came to losing Sarah before she was even old enough to remember. "Your mother is the strongest person I've ever known," Austin told them. "She risked everything to protect Sarah, to give her a better life. And she gave me the gift of a family when I thought I'd never have one. You should all be proud to be her children." Sarah, old enough to understand by then, asked questions about her biological father. Emma answered honestly but carefully, explaining that Thomas had been sick in a way that made him cruel, that Emma had left to keep Sarah safe, that Austin was Sarah's real father in all the ways that mattered. "You miss him?" Sarah asked. "I miss the man I thought he was when we first met," Emma admitted. But that man wasn't real. The real Thomas was someone who hurt people he was supposed to love. I don't miss that man at all. I'm grateful every day that I found the courage to leave and that your papa found us in that storm. Sarah seemed satisfied with this answer, and as she grew older, she never asked about Thomas again. Austin was her father, the man who taught her to ride, who dried her tears, who made her feel safe and loved. Biology mattered far less than daily devotion. The years passed in a blur of growth and change. The children started school, making the long ride to the one-room schoolhouse in town several times a week. Emma and Austin's ranch became one of the most successful in the region, known for quality cattle and fair dealing. They were respected members of their community, hosting gatherings for neighbors and helping others in times of need. In 1892, 10 years after that fateful night when Austin pulled Emma from the frozen wagon, they decided to host a celebration. They invited Austin's family, their neighbors, and friends from town for a party that would commemorate not just their anniversary, but everything they had built together. The house and yard filled with people, children running wild while adults shared food and stories. Austin's mother pulled Emma aside at one point, her eyes misty with emotion. "I wish you could have seen Austin before you met him," Grace said quietly. "He was like a ghost, going through the motions of living but not really alive. And now look at him." They both turned to watch Austin, who was in the middle of a group of children, including his own 5, telling some exaggerated story that had them all laughing. His face was animated, his eyes bright, his entire being radiating happiness and contentment. "You gave me back my son," Grace continued, "and you gave him a beautiful family. I can never thank you enough." "He gave me everything too," Emma said, her own eyes growing wet. "We saved each other, Austin and I. That's what love does, I think. It saves us from the worst of ourselves and our circumstances. It makes us better, stronger, more complete." As the sun set on that celebration, Emma stood with Austin on their porch, watching their children play in the yard while their guests mingled and laughed. She thought about the journey that had brought them here, about all the choices and chances that had aligned to create this moment. "Happy?" Austin asked, pulling her close. "Happier than I ever imagined possible," Emma replied honestly. "You kept every promise you made to me, Austin. You protected us, loved us, gave us a beautiful life." "It's been my privilege," Austin said simply. "Loving you and our children is the easiest thing I've ever done." The children grew and eventually began to leave home one by one to start their own lives. Sarah married a rancher's son from a neighboring property, a good young man who reminded Emma of Austin in his quiet strength and gentle nature. Tommy went east to study veterinary medicine, wanting to bring modern techniques back to help the ranchers in their region. James took over more of the daily operations of the ranch, planning to inherit it someday. Anna became a teacher, opening a school in town, while Grace surprised everyone by developing a talent for painting, her canvases capturing the beauty of the Wyoming landscape they all loved. Through all these changes, Austin and Emma remained each other's constant. They aged together, his hair graying at the temples, her face developing lines from years of smiling and sun. But when they looked at each other, they still saw the people they had been that winter night when everything changed. On their 20th wedding anniversary, Austin took Emma on a ride out to the spot where he had found her wagon. The area had changed somewhat, a new road cutting through where the old trail had been, but they could still identify the general location. "It doesn't look like much," Emma said, surveying the unremarkable stretch of land. "But this spot changed everything." "It's where my life really began," Austin said seriously. "Everything before this was just preparation for meeting you." Emma leaned against him, comfortable in the saddle after years of riding. "I was so scared that night. I was certain we were going to die. And then you appeared, like an angel sent to save us." "Just a cowboy checking on his cattle," Austin said with a smile. "But I'm grateful every day that I did, that I found you and Sarah, that I got to be part of your lives to build this family with you." They sat there for a while, watching the wind move through the grass, remembering and grateful. Then they rode back to the ranch, to the house full of family visiting for the occasion, to the life they had built from those desperate frozen moments. More years passed, bringing grandchildren and then great-grandchildren. The ranch continued to thrive under James's management, with Tommy consulting on animal health and the daughters visiting frequently with their own families. Austin and Emma moved into a smaller house on the property, leaving the main house for James and his growing family. But they remained active and involved, beloved grandparents who told stories of the old days to rapt audiences of youngsters. On a warm spring evening in 1910, Emma and Austin sat on their porch watching yet another Wyoming sunset. They were in their late 60s now, slowed by age but still sharp and engaged with life. Sarah had just left after a visit with her 3 children, and the house felt quiet after their departure. "You have any regrets?" Emma asked suddenly. "Anything you wish you had done differently?" Austin considered the question carefully. "I regret the years I wasted wallowing in grief after Catherine died," he said finally. "But I can't regret them too much, because if I had moved on sooner, I wouldn't have been there that night to find you. So maybe everything happened exactly as it was meant to." "I regret marrying Thomas," Emma admitted. "But I can't regret it completely either, because he gave me Sarah, and Sarah brought us together. It's strange how even our worst mistakes can lead to our greatest blessings if we're brave enough to keep moving forward." "You were so brave," Austin said, taking her hand. "Leaving him, protecting Sarah, surviving that storm. I don't think I ever told you how much I admired your courage. You showed me every day by treating me as an equal, by respecting my choices, by being the kind of man who made me feel safe enough to be brave," Emma replied. "We built something good together, Austin, something that will last long after we're gone." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the stars emerge one by one in the darkening sky. The wind carried the scent of sage and grass, familiar and beloved. Somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed softly. A horse whinnied from the barn. These were the sounds of home, of the life they had created together. "I love you, Emma Ramsey," Austin said, his voice still strong despite his years. "From that first moment I saw you in the wagon, half frozen but still fighting to save your baby, I was lost. You captured my heart and you've held it safe ever since." "And I love you, Austin Ramsey," Emma replied, her eyes shining with tears of joy and memory. "You saved my life, but more than that, you gave me a reason to live it fully. You showed me what real love looks like, what a real partnership feels like. Everything good in my life traces back to the moment you found us in that storm." As night fell completely, they went inside their cozy home, arms around each other, still as connected as they had been in those early days. The life they had built together stood as testament to the power of second chances, to the strength found in choosing love over fear, to the miracles that can emerge from the darkest moments. Their story became legend in the family, passed down through generations. Great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren heard about the winter storm, the frozen wagon, the silent baby, and the cowboy who saved them both and heard the sweetest cry. They heard about the love that grew in that small cabin, about courage and compassion, about building something beautiful from hardship and pain. Emma and Austin lived into their mid-70s, blessed with long lives and excellent health for their era. They died within 6 months of each other, Austin first in his sleep, one peaceful night, and Emma following him after making sure all their affairs were in order, and all their children knew how much they were loved. At Emma's funeral, Sarah stood before the gathered crowd, now a woman in her 50s with her own grandchildren, and told the story one more time. She told it with tears and laughter, describing the mother who had risked everything to save her, the cowboy who had warmed them both back to life, and the family that grew from that fateful meeting. "My mother taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly in the packed church. "It's being terrified and doing what needs to be done anyway. She was afraid that night in the storm, afraid for both of us, but she never stopped fighting. And my father, my real father in every way that matters, rode into that storm and brought us to safety. Together, they showed us all what love looks like. Real, lasting, devoted love that weathers every storm and grows stronger with time." She paused, looking at the simple pine coffin where her mother lay beside the grave where Austin had been buried 6 months earlier. "They're together now," Sarah continued, smiling through her tears, "as they were always meant to be. And their legacy lives on in every one of us, in the values they taught, the love they showed, the family they built. We are all here because a cowboy decided to check on a broken wagon during a storm, because a mother refused to give up, because 2 wounded people found each other and chose healing over hurt, love over loneliness, hope over despair." The service ended and Emma was laid to rest beside Austin, their graves marked with simple stones that bore their names, dates, and a single inscription chosen by their children. Love saved them both. Years turned into decades, and the ranch continued under the stewardship of their descendants. The original cabin where Emma and Austin fell in love was preserved and maintained, becoming a cherished landmark that family members visited to remember their roots. The larger house where they raised their children remained in the family, expanded and modernized but still fundamentally the home Emma and Austin had built together. Their story remained alive in family memory, told and retold with each generation. It became a touchstone, a reminder of where they came from and what they valued. When descendants faced their own hardships, they thought of Emma fleeing into a winter storm to protect her child. When they struggled with grief or loneliness, they remembered Austin's isolation in that cabin before Emma arrived. And when they found love, they aspired to the kind of partnership Emma and Austin had modeled, built on respect, devotion, and the daily choice to cherish each other. The land they had loved continued to roll on under the endless Wyoming sky, marked by the changing seasons, hosting new generations who worked it and loved it as Emma and Austin had. The wind still whispered through the grass. The stars still emerged each night in brilliant profusion. The cattle still grazed the hills, and the spirit of 2 people who had found each other in the darkest moment and built something luminous together lived on in every sunset, every birth, every triumph over hardship. Their great-great-grandchildren never knew Emma and Austin personally, but they knew their story. They knew about the frozen wagon and the silent baby. They knew about the cowboy who warmed them both and heard the sweetest cry. They knew about love that saved and healed and endured. And in knowing, they understood that they were part of something larger than themselves, part of a legacy built on courage and compassion, on second chances and steadfast devotion. The story of Emma and Austin became more than just family history. It became mythology, a testament to the power of love to transform lives, to the strength found in choosing hope over despair, to the miracles that can emerge when 2 broken people find each other and decide to heal together. Their names might fade with time, the specific details might blur, but the essence of their story would live on forever. A beacon of light showing that even in the darkest storms, even in the most desperate moments, love can still find a way. And somewhere in the vast expanse of Wyoming, if you listen carefully on a winter night when the wind howls and the snow falls, you might hear echoes of that sweetest cry, the sound of a baby brought back to life by a cowboy's warmth, the sound that marked the beginning of a love story that would span generations and inspire hearts for all time to come.